My ex-husband filed a fake restraining order to take our daughter away. Even the police and judge believed him. But I found the one thing he was trying to hide. I was 3 blocks from my ex-husband's house when a patrol car lit up behind me. This close to his place, this time of evening, it felt wrong. I checked my mirrors twice, made sure I signaled, rolled down my window before the officer even reached my door. License and registration. He didn't look at me when he said it. I fumbled through my glove box, hands clumsy. Is there a problem, officer? I wasn't speeding. He took my license without answering, walked back to his car. 5 minutes stretched into 10. Other drivers slowed down to stare as they passed. My phone buzzed. Brian asking where I was. I didn't answer. When the officer came back, he had papers folded in his hand. Step out of the vehicle, please. What? Why? Ma'am, step out of the vehicle. My legs felt disconnected from my body. The asphalt was still warm from the afternoon sun. He handed me the papers, and I unfolded them right there on the sidewalk. Restraining order. Temporary protection order. My name, Claire Hoffman, typed at the top as the respondent. My daughter's name, Sophie, listed as the protected party. There must be some mistake. My voice came out thin. I never got served. I never signed anything. You're being served now. You're prohibited from contact with the minor child, Sophie Hoffman, until your court date. That includes phone calls, texts, visits, or approaching within 500 feet of her residence or school. This is insane. I'm her mother. I have custody every other week. I'm supposed to pick her up right now. Not according to this order, ma'am. He pointed to the signature line. That's your name, isn't it? I looked down. Claire M. Hoffman, written in blue ink. It looked nothing like my signature. The letters were too straight, too careful. I signed things every day. Bank forms, school permission slips, grocery receipts. I knew my own handwriting. That's not my signature. You'll need to take that up with the court. He was already backing toward his car. If you violate this order, you will be arrested. Do you understand? No, I don't understand. Who filed this? When? The petitioner is listed on page 2. Your court date is in 3 weeks. I flipped pages with shaking fingers. Petitioner, Brian Hoffman. Filed 2 days ago. Allegations, erratic behavior, verbal threats, unsafe living conditions, emotional instability. This is fake. He made this up. The officer was in his car. He rolled down the window just enough to speak. That's for the judge to decide. Stay away from the child. He pulled away, and I stood there holding papers that said I was dangerous to my own daughter. My phone rang. Brian again, I answered. What did you do? Claire, where are you? Sophie's waiting. Don't play stupid with me. A cop just handed me a restraining order with your name on it. Silence. Then his voice shifted, softer, careful. I didn't want to do this. You left me no choice. No choice? What are you talking about? You've been unstable. Everyone's noticed. I can't have Sophie exposed to that. I haven't done anything. This is a lie. The court will see the evidence. I documented everything. He paused. You should get a lawyer. Let me talk to Sophie. That would be violating the order. I can't let you do that. She's my daughter, and I'm protecting her. His voice was calm, steady, reasonable. I'll see you in court, Claire. He hung up. I stood on the sidewalk as the sun dropped lower, turning everything orange and gold. Cars passed. Families headed home for dinner. Somewhere 3 blocks away, my daughter was probably asking why I hadn't shown up, and I couldn't call her. Couldn't text. Couldn't drive over there without getting arrested. I looked down at the papers again. The signature that wasn't mine. The allegations that painted me as someone I'd never been. Brian had done this. Somehow he'd made it official, made it legal, and until I could prove otherwise, the law was on his side. The first lawyer I called didn't pick up. The second one listened for 30 seconds before cutting me off. Ma'am, if you've already been served, there's not much I can do tonight. You need to file a response within 20 days, but honestly, most judges take these orders seriously, especially when there's a child involved. But I didn't do anything. The signature isn't even mine. You'll have a chance to present that in court. I'd recommend gathering character witnesses, documentation of your relationship with your daughter, anything that shows you're a fit parent. I hung up before he finished. Character witnesses, documentation. Like I was the one who needed to prove myself. I tried calling Sophie's school, but they'd already closed for the evening. I pulled up Brian's social media on my phone, something I hadn't checked in months. His latest post was from an hour ago. A photo of him and Sophie at the playground near his house. She was on the swings, head tilted back, hair flying. The caption read, making the most of our time together. Sometimes being a parent means making hard choices to keep them safe. The comments were already rolling in. Friends, family, people I used to know when we were married. You're such a good dad, Brian. Sophie's lucky to have you. Praying for you both during this difficult time. I scrolled further. He'd posted another one earlier that day. A close-up of Sophie doing homework at his kitchen table. Stability and routine. That's what kids need most. No mention of me. No explanation of what he meant by hard choices. Just him, playing the devoted single father while everyone filled in the blanks themselves. My phone buzzed. A text from my sister Vanessa. Brian just called me. Said you've been having some kind of breakdown? What's going on? I stared at the message. He'd already gotten to her. I called her back. Van, it's not true. He filed a fake restraining order to keep me from Sophie. A restraining order? Claire, what did you do? Nothing. That's what I'm trying to tell you. He forged my signature. He made the whole thing up. There was a pause. Too long. Okay, but why would he do that? You two have been split for over a year. What would he gain? I don't know yet, but I need you to believe me. I do believe you. He sounded really worried. He said you've been erratic lately, showing up at odd times, saying strange things to Sophie. That's a lie. He mentioned you forgot to pick her up from school last month. I was stuck in traffic. I called him and told him I'd be late. He's twisting everything. Vanessa sighed. Look, I'm not taking sides, but maybe you should just, I don't know, take a step back? Let things cool down? He won't let me see my daughter. Maybe that's for the best right now. Just until you sort this out. I hung up. My own sister thought I'd lost it. I spent the next 2 hours on the phone. Another lawyer. This one willing to meet, but not until next week. A legal aid hotline that transferred me 3 times before disconnecting. A paralegal who explained that restraining orders were considered protective measures, which meant judges erred on the side of caution. Translation: I was guilty until proven innocent. By 10 that night, I'd called everyone I could think of. No one had answers. Most of them sounded skeptical, like they were humoring me until I calmed down. I tried to sleep but couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sophie waiting by the door, wondering why I hadn't come. Brian would tell her something. Maybe that I was sick. Maybe that I didn't want to see her. Whatever he said, she'd believe him because she was 7 and he was her father, and I wasn't there to tell her otherwise. I checked his social media again at midnight. Another post. This time it was a photo of Sophie asleep on the couch curled up under a blanket. Tough day for this little one. Grateful for the chance to be here for her. The comments came faster this time. You're amazing, Brian. She's so lucky. What happened with Claire? That last one was from his cousin Rachel. She'd always liked me when we were married. Now she was fishing for gossip in a public thread. Someone else replied before Brian could. I heard she's been unstable. Really sad situation. I threw my phone across the room. It hit the wall and clattered to the floor, screen still glowing. The worst part was knowing this was just the start. Brian had planned this. The timing, the posts, the calls to my family. He'd set the stage so that when people heard my side, they'd already decided I was the problem. I picked up my phone. The screen had a crack running through the corner, but it still worked. I opened my messages and started typing to Brian, then stopped. Anything I said could be used against me. Angry texts, desperate pleas, even calm explanations. It would all get screenshotted and filed as evidence of my instability. I deleted the draft and opened my photos instead. Hundreds of pictures of Sophie. Birthday parties, school events, random afternoons at the park. Proof that I'd been there for every moment that mattered. Proof that I was her mother. But Brian had proof too. Legal documents, official stamps, my name on paper. In a courtroom, his proof would speak louder than mine. I called one more number. My friend Jenna, someone who'd known me since college. She answered on the third ring, voice thick with sleep. Claire, it's midnight. I know. I'm sorry. Brian filed a restraining order against me. He's saying I'm dangerous to Sophie. Silence. Then, wait, what? I explained it all again. The traffic stop, the forged signature, the posts online. Jenna listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "That's insane. You're the most stable person I know." I could have cried. Thank you. What can I do? I don't know yet. Maybe just don't believe him if he reaches out to you. He won't. We barely know each other. But I wasn't sure about that anymore. Brian had already called Vanessa, posted on every platform he had, made sure the story spread as fast as possible. By morning, everyone would know his version. By the time I got to court, it wouldn't matter what the truth was. People had already decided. I showed up at Sophie's school the next morning anyway. The secretary at the front desk recognized me immediately. I'd been signing Sophie in and out for 2 years, volunteering at bake sales, chaperoning field trips. But when I asked to see her, the woman's expression shifted. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Hoffman. We received notice yesterday that you're not authorized to pick up Sophie anymore. It's Ms. Hoffman, and I'm her mother. I understand, but we have documentation on file. You'll need to speak with the principal if you want to contest it." Then let me speak with the principal. She made a call. 5 minutes later, Principal Brennan appeared, the same man who'd thanked me last month for organizing the book fair. He didn't invite me into his office. "Ms. Hoffman, I know this is difficult, but we have to follow legal procedures. If there's a restraining order in place, it's fake. My ex forged it." He glanced at the secretary, then back at me. "That's something you'll need to resolve through the courts. Until then, we can't allow you on school property or near your daughter during school hours. I'm not trying to take her. I just want to know she's okay. Sophie is fine. Mr. Hoffman drops her off every morning and picks her up every afternoon. She's adjusting well. Adjusting. Like I'd been gone for months instead of one day. Can you at least tell her I'm thinking about her?" Principal Brennan hesitated. "I don't think that's appropriate given the circumstances." I left before I said something I'd regret. The restraining order had turned me into a threat overnight. People who'd known me for years were treating me like I might snap at any moment. I tried calling Brian again. Blocked. I sent an email asking if Sophie was okay, if she understood why I hadn't come to get her. No response. I texted his mother, who'd always been kind to me during the marriage. She replied an hour later with a short message telling me to leave her son alone and focus on getting help. Getting help. Like I was the one who needed fixing. My lawyer finally called me back that afternoon. His name was Gordon Walsh, and he'd agreed to meet after I'd left 3 voicemails and sent copies of the restraining order documents. "I reviewed what you sent," he said. "The signature does look questionable, but proving forgery is going to be difficult. It's not my handwriting. You'll need a handwriting expert. That takes time and money. And even if we prove the signature is forged, we still have to convince the judge that your ex fabricated the entire order, which is a serious accusation, because it's a serious crime." Exactly. Which means the judge will want very clear evidence before overturning a protective order. In the meantime, you need to follow it to the letter. No contact with your daughter, no showing up at places she might be, no third-party messages through friends or family. So I just wait? You prepare. Gather documentation, texts, emails, anything that shows you've been a good mother. Get character references from people who can vouch for you. We need to build a case that shows this order is baseless. I spent the rest of the week doing exactly that. I pulled up old text threads with Brian showing normal co-parenting conversations. I contacted Sophie's teacher, who agreed to write a letter about my involvement in her education. I asked Jenna and 2 other friends to provide references, but every step forward felt like 2 steps back. Sophie's teacher sent a polite email saying she couldn't get involved in legal matters between parents. One of my friends said she'd write a letter but never sent it. The other one stopped responding to my messages entirely. Brian, meanwhile, kept posting photos of Sophie at his place, cooking dinner together, doing crafts at the kitchen table. Every caption was carefully worded to imply he was holding things together during a crisis. He never mentioned me directly, but he didn't have to. Everyone reading between the lines drew their own conclusions. I tried to visit Sophie at Brian's house on what should have been my custody day. I parked a block away so I wouldn't technically violate the 500-foot rule, then called him from the car. He answered on the first ring. You're violating the order. I'm a block away. I just want to talk. The order says no contact. That includes phone calls. You can't keep me from my daughter forever. I'm not keeping you from her. The court is. You did this to yourself, Claire. I didn't do anything. You need help. Everyone can see it. The sooner you accept that, the sooner we can move forward. Let me talk to Sophie. No, please. Just for a minute. I won't tell her anything about the court stuff. I just want her to know I'm okay. She already knows you're okay. I told her you've been dealing with some personal issues and need space to work through them. She understands. She's 7. She doesn't understand. She understands more than you think. She asked me this morning if you were mad at her. I told her no, that sometimes adults have problems that have nothing to do with kids. She seemed relieved. I hung up. He'd already rewritten the story in Sophie's head. I wasn't her mother anymore. I was a problem he was protecting her from. I drove to the police station next. Maybe if I filed a report about the forged signature, it would carry weight in court. The officer at the desk listened to my explanation, took notes, then told me I'd need to provide proof before they could investigate. What kind of proof? A notarized statement from a handwriting expert. Copies of documents with your verified signature for comparison. Anything that demonstrates the signature on the restraining order isn't yours. That's what I'm trying to establish. We can't launch an investigation based on accusations. You'll need to gather evidence first. I left with nothing. No report, no case number, no acknowledgement that anything criminal had even happened. That night, I found out Brian had blocked me on all social media. I'd been checking his posts through my account, but suddenly everything was private. I couldn't see the photos, couldn't read the comments, couldn't even view his profile. He'd cut off my last window into Sophie's life. I made a fake account just to see. It took 10 minutes and a random photo pulled from the internet. When I searched for Brian's profile again, everything appeared. His latest post was from an hour ago. A video of Sophie practicing her spelling words at the dining room table. The caption read, "Proud of this kid. She's handling everything like a champ." The comments were full of heart emojis and supportive messages. His brother wrote, "You're doing great, man. Stay strong." One of his coworkers added, "She's lucky to have such a stable environment." Stable. Like I'd been chaos. I tried to order a birthday gift for Sophie online, thinking I could have it shipped to Brian's address. The order went through, but an hour later I got a cancellation notice. Brian had called the company and told them not to deliver anything from me. The customer service rep explained that the recipient had the right to refuse unwanted packages. Unwanted. A gift from her own mother. My response to the restraining order was due in 2 days. Gordon had drafted something professional and restrained, stating that I denied all allegations and questioned the validity of the order. It didn't mention forgery or conspiracy. He said that would come later, once we had the evidence to back it up. Right now, we just need to show you're taking this seriously, he explained. No drama, no wild accusations. Just a calm, measured response that makes you look reasonable. Reasonable. Meanwhile, Brian was out there poisoning every relationship I had, turning my daughter against me, and playing victim for an audience that ate up every word. I filed the response at the courthouse downtown. The clerk stamped it without looking up, added it to a stack of folders, and told me my hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks out. 3 more weeks of no contact, no updates, no proof that Sophie even remembered I existed. When I got home, my landlord was waiting in the hallway. He handed me an envelope, a noise complaint from my downstairs neighbor claiming I'd been shouting at all hours, slamming doors, playing loud music. None of it was true, but the complaint was dated and signed. Just keep it down, okay? The landlord said. I don't want to have to escalate this. I opened the envelope after he left. The neighbor's signature looked rushed, the handwriting shaky. I'd never even spoken to the person who lived below me, but it didn't matter. Someone had filed it, and now it was on record. Another piece of evidence that I was unstable, out of control, exactly what Brian had been saying all along. Vanessa called me 2 days later sounding careful, like she was talking to someone fragile. I ran into Brian at the grocery store. He mentioned you've been showing up places trying to contact Sophie. I went to her school once. That's it. He said you've been driving by his house. I parked a block away one time to call him. I didn't even get out of the car. There was a pause. Claire, he's really worried about you. We all are. We? Who's we? Mom called me yesterday. She saw Brian's posts and wanted to know what's going on. His family's been reaching out to ours, sharing screenshots of things you've sent. What screenshots? I haven't sent him anything except one email asking about Sophie. He showed me a bunch of texts. You called him unstable, accused him of lying to everyone, said he was manipulating Sophie against you. I pulled up my message history with Brian. The last text I'd sent was 3 weeks ago. Something mundane about Sophie's dentist appointment. Everything after that was gone. Deleted or never existed in the first place. Van, I didn't send those texts. They had your name on them. Your number. Then he faked them somehow. I don't know how, but he did. Another pause. Longer this time. Okay, I'm going to say this because I care about you. Have you considered that maybe you're not remembering things clearly? Stress can do that. Maybe you sent those texts and forgot, or I hung up. My own sister thought I was losing my mind. That afternoon, I got a call from my boss. I'd been working remotely for the past week, trying to keep up with my job while dealing with everything else. I thought I'd been doing fine. Apparently not. Claire, we need to talk about your performance lately. Has something been wrong with my work? You missed the deadline on the Brennan account. The client called asking where their files were. I sent those 3 days ago. I don't have anything from you, and you were supposed to join the team meeting yesterday. You never logged on. The meeting. I'd completely forgotten. The Brennan files, I remembered sending them, attaching the documents, hitting send, but when I checked my sent folder, there was nothing. Just a draft that had never been completed. I'll get you those files today. That's not really the point. You've been distracted, missing things. I know you're going through something personal right now, but I need to know you can handle your workload. I can. I will. Take the rest of the week off. Sort out whatever's going on. We can reassess next Monday. I tried to argue, but he'd already made up his mind. Another part of my life falling apart? Brian's posts kept coming. He'd started a GoFundMe, claiming he needed help covering legal fees and childcare costs while dealing with a difficult co-parenting situation. The description was vague, but effective. He never said my name, never detailed what I'd supposedly done, just painted himself as a struggling single dad trying to protect his daughter. Within 2 days, he'd raised over $4,000. People I'd considered friends had donated. Vanessa's name was on the list. So was my former boss from my last job, someone I hadn't spoken to in over a year. The comment section was full of support and speculation. What kind of mother puts her child through this? He's such a good dad. She doesn't deserve to see that little girl. I hope he gets full custody. Sophie needs stability. I wanted to scream. I wanted to comment on every post, defend myself, expose him for the liar he was. But Gordon had been clear. Anything I said publicly could be used against me. The more I reacted, the more unstable I'd look. So I stayed silent while Brian collected money and sympathy from people who thought they were helping a victim. Then the calls started. Unknown numbers. Always late at night. I'd answer and hear nothing but silence, then a click. It happened 3 times in one evening. The 4th time I didn't answer. They left a voicemail, just breathing, then a hang up. I called the police. They told me to block the numbers and keep a record of the calls, but unless they were explicit threats, there wasn't much they could do. I asked if they could trace the calls. The officer explained it would require a subpoena, which meant going through the courts, which meant more time and money I didn't have. The calls continued, sometimes multiple times a night. I stopped answering my phone entirely unless I recognized the number. Brian's brother posted a long status update about family loyalty and protecting children from toxic situations. He didn't name me, but he didn't have to. Everyone knew who he meant. The post got over 200 likes and dozens of comments agreeing that some people shouldn't be parents. I made the mistake of checking Brian's mother's page. She'd shared a photo of Sophie from years ago, captioned with something about cherishing the grandchildren you can still see. The implication was obvious. The comments were worse. Is Claire still causing problems? That poor baby. At least she has Brian. Some women just aren't cut out for motherhood. I reported the post. The platform said it didn't violate their community guidelines. Jenna stopped responding to my calls. When I finally reached her, she sounded distant. I'm sorry, Claire. I want to be there for you, but Brian called me last week. He asked if you'd been talking to me, said you'd been spreading rumors about him to mutual friends. What rumors? He wouldn't give specifics. Just said you've been trying to turn people against him, and he wanted to make sure I knew the truth. The truth is he's lying about everything. I believe you. I do, but I can't get involved in this. I have kids too, and if he's willing to call me out of nowhere like that, I don't want him showing up at my house or dragging me into court as a witness or, I'm sorry. I just can't. She hung up before I could respond. I counted the people I had left. Gordon, who was being paid to be on my side. My landlord, who barely tolerated me. A handful of coworkers who didn't know what was happening. That was it. Everyone else had either turned on me or disappeared. Brian was everywhere. In my phone with those silent calls. In my inbox with forwarded messages from his lawyer. In my head every time I tried to sleep and couldn't stop imagining what he was telling Sophie about me. 2 weeks before the hearing, I got a letter from Child Services. Someone had filed a report claiming I'd been seen outside Sophie's school multiple times, behaving erratically and trying to approach children in the playground. The report said I appeared disheveled and possibly under the influence of something. I'd been to the school once. I'd never tried to approach anyone. I'd never been anywhere near the playground, but the report was filed, and now there was an open investigation. A caseworker would be contacting me to schedule a home visit and interview. I called Gordon. He's making things up and filing official reports. How is this legal? It's not. But proving he's behind it is another story. Anyone can file a report to Child Services if they believe a child is at risk. The system is designed to protect kids, even if that means investigating claims that turn out to be false. So he can just keep doing this? Until we prove a pattern of false reporting, yes. And even then, it's hard to prosecute. The courts don't want to discourage people from reporting genuine concerns. I sat in my apartment that night staring at the letter. The home visit was scheduled for 3 days from now. They'd inspect my living space, ask about my mental health, question my fitness as a parent. One more hurdle Brian had thrown in my path. The worst part was knowing he'd thought of everything. The forged order to get legal standing. The social media campaign to poison public opinion. The fake reports to create an official record of problems. The silent phone calls to keep me on edge. The isolation so I had no one to back me up. He'd spent weeks building a case against me, and I'd spent weeks trying to prove I wasn't the person he said I was. But proof didn't matter when everyone had already made up their minds. The caseworker showed up exactly on time. Her name was Lori something. I didn't catch the last name. She had a clipboard and a kind smile that didn't reach her eyes. I just need to take a look around, ask a few questions. This shouldn't take long. She walked through my apartment slowly, opening cabinets, checking the fridge, glancing into my bedroom. Everything was clean. I'd spent the previous night scrubbing floors and organizing closets, making sure there was nothing she could point to as evidence of instability. Do you live alone? Yes. And when Sophie stays with you, where does she sleep? She has her own room. I led her down the hall. Sophie's room was exactly as she'd left it 3 weeks ago. Stuffed animals on the bed, drawings taped to the walls, books stacked on the nightstand. Lori made notes. How often does Sophie stay here? We had week on week off custody, before the restraining order. And you believe the restraining order is false? I know it is. I never signed those papers. She wrote something down. Have you sought counseling or any kind of professional support during this time? No, I've been focused on preparing for the hearing. More notes. Mr. Hoffman mentioned concerns about your mental health. Has that been an issue in the past? No, he's lying. Have you been diagnosed with any conditions? Depression, anxiety, anything like that? No. She asked about my job, my finances, my relationship with Sophie. Every answer felt like a test I was failing. When she finally left, she told me she'd submit her report to the court within a week. She didn't say what would be in it. I called Gordon immediately. The caseworker just left. She kept asking about my mental health like she'd already decided something was wrong. That's standard. They ask everyone the same questions. But Brian planted that idea in her head before she even got here. Probably. But if your home is clean, you have a stable environment, and you answered everything honestly, the report should be fine. Should be, not will be. That night, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Ms. Hoffman, this is Irene Delgado. I used to live next door to you and Brian. It took me a second to place the name. Mrs. Delgado, the older woman who'd lived in the unit beside ours before Brian and I split. She'd moved out about 6 months after our divorce, downsizing to something smaller after her husband passed. Mrs. Delgado. Hi, I'm sorry. I wasn't expecting. I've been following what's happening online. Brian's posts. All those people saying terrible things about you. I wanted to reach out sooner, but I wasn't sure if I should get involved. I appreciate that. He's lying, isn't he? I stopped. Yes, I thought so. I always knew there was something off about that man. Too smooth, you know? Always had the right thing to say, but it never felt genuine. Did he do something when you lived next door? Nothing I could prove. But I saw things, heard things. The way he'd talk to you when he thought no one was listening, it wasn't kind. And after you two split, he'd bring different women around, parade them in front of Sophie like he was trying to make a point. I'd heard about the women. Sophie had mentioned them a few times, always casual, always in a way that made it clear Brian had coached her on what to say. Mrs. Delgado continued. But that's not why I'm calling. I still live in the same neighborhood just a few blocks over. I saw Brian last week late at night. He was loading boxes into his car. Boxes? A lot of them. Looked like he was moving. So I drove by his place the next day and there was a rental truck in the driveway. I got curious, so I kept an eye out. 2 nights ago, I saw him at the leasing office for that new complex on Westfield Avenue, the one near the highway. Westfield's 40 miles away. I know. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe he was looking for a friend or something. But then I saw him signing papers. The leasing agent handed him keys. My stomach dropped. He's moving. That's what it looked like to me. And he was being real secretive about it. Packing at night, not telling anyone. I asked around at the old complex and nobody's heard him mention moving. Did you take any photos? I did, actually. Wasn't sure if you'd need them, but I figured better safe than sorry. She texted them to me while we were still on the phone. 3 photos. Brian's car loaded with boxes. Brian at the leasing office talking to someone in a polo shirt. Brian accepting a set of keys and shaking hands with the agent. The timestamps showed they were taken over the past week. Mrs. Delgado, this is... I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to. I should have said something sooner. I didn't realize how bad things had gotten until I saw all those posts. He's trying to take Sophie away from you, isn't he? I think so. Well, now you have proof he's planning something. Use it. I sent the photos to Gordon immediately. He called me back 10 minutes later. This changes everything. He's planning to run. It looks that way. If he's signing a lease out of state and hasn't disclosed it to the court, that's a violation of custody agreements. Even with the restraining order, he's required to notify you of any major changes like relocation. So what do? We file a motion to block relocation and submit these photos as evidence. If he's planning to move Sophie without permission, the judge will see it as an attempt to deny you access. Combined with the questions about the restraining order, this could work in our favor. For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than panic. Can we file before the hearing? We'll file tomorrow morning. I'll request an emergency review given the relocation risk. The judge might not grant it, but it'll be on record. I looked at the photos again after we hung up. Brian standing outside the leasing office, smiling like he'd just signed a deal instead of planning to disappear with our daughter. The boxes in his car, probably Sophie's things mixed in with his, ready to be driven to a new place where I'd never find them. He'd been so careful. The restraining order to cut off my contact. The social media campaign to make me look unstable. The false reports to create a paper trail. All of it was leading to this. Him moving Sophie out of state while everyone thought he was just protecting her from an unfit mother. But he'd slipped. He'd assumed no one was watching. And Mrs. Delgado had been paying attention when it mattered. I called her back. Mrs. Delgado, would you be willing to testify if it comes to that? Absolutely. I'll tell them everything I saw. That man doesn't deserve to keep that little girl if he's going to lie and manipulate like this. Gordon filed the motion the next morning. By afternoon, we had a response from Brian's lawyer. A denial that any relocation was planned, followed by accusations that I was continuing to harass Brian and interfere with his life. They claimed the photos were taken out of context and that Brian had been helping a friend move. Gordon fired back with a copy of the lease agreement. He'd called the complex on Westfield Avenue, confirmed that Brian Hoffman had signed a year-long lease starting in 2 weeks. The leasing agent had been cooperative once Gordon explained the situation. Brian's lawyer went quiet after that. The hearing was still a week away, but the momentum had shifted. For weeks, I'd been on the defensive, scrambling to prove I wasn't the monster Brian had painted me as. Now he was the one who had to explain himself. I got another call from Vanessa that night. I saw your lawyer filed something about Brian moving. Is that true? Yes. He told me he was just looking at options. He said you were blowing it out of proportion. He signed a lease van. He was going to take Sophie to another state without telling anyone. Silence. Then why would he do that? Because the restraining order was never about protecting Sophie. It was about cutting me out so he could leave. More silence. I'm sorry I didn't believe you. It's fine. It's not. I should have listened. I didn't have the energy to reassure her. I have to go. The hearing's next week. Gordon called again the next morning. Brian's lawyer wants to settle. Settle? Drop the restraining order, return to the original custody agreement, and both parties agree not to pursue further legal action. No. I figured you'd say that. I told them we're going to trial. If Brian wants to avoid consequences, he should have thought about that before forging legal documents and planning to flee the state. What happens now? We prepare. We have the photos, the lease agreement, Mrs. Delgado's testimony. We'll also bring in the handwriting expert I hired to analyze the restraining order signature. It's not perfect, but it's enough to raise serious questions about Brian's credibility. And if the judge doesn't believe us, Gordon paused, then we appeal. But Claire, I think we're going to win this. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Fluorescent lights, beige walls, rows of wooden benches that reminded me of church pews. Brian sat at the table across from mine with his lawyer, a sharp-looking woman in a gray suit who kept whispering to him while reviewing documents. He looked calm, confident, like he'd already won. Judge Reeves entered, and everyone stood. She was older, maybe in her 60s, with reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. She settled into her seat and gestured for everyone to sit. We're here regarding the restraining order filed by Mr. Brian Hoffman against Ms. Claire Hoffman, along with a motion filed by Ms. Hoffman contesting the validity of said order and requesting emergency review due to alleged relocation plans. Let's begin with Mr. Hoffman's petition. Counsel, Brian's lawyer stood. Your Honor, my client filed this protective order out of genuine concern for his daughter's safety. Ms. Hoffman has exhibited erratic behavior over the past several months, showing up unannounced, making unfounded accusations, and creating an unstable environment for the child. Do you have evidence of this behavior? We have documentation, Your Honor. Text messages, witness statements, and a report from Child Services indicating concerns about Ms. Hoffman's living situation and mental state. She handed a stack of papers to the bailiff, who passed them to the judge. I watched Judge Reeves flip through them, her expression neutral. Gordon stood. Your Honor, those text messages are fabricated. Ms. Hoffman never sent them. The Child Services report was triggered by a false complaint, which we believe was filed by Mr. Hoffman himself as part of a pattern of harassment designed to paint my client as unfit. Brian's lawyer jumped in. That's a serious accusation with no basis in fact. Mr. Hoffman has been nothing but cooperative throughout this process. He's concerned for his daughter's well-being, not engaged in some conspiracy to, let's address the restraining order itself, Judge Reeves interrupted. She held up the document. Ms. Hoffman, you're claiming this signature isn't yours? I stood. Yes, Your Honor, I never signed that form. I never appeared before a notary. The entire thing is fake. That's impossible, Brian's lawyer said. The document was notarized and filed through proper channels. Gordon pulled out his own folder. We hired a handwriting expert to analyze the signature. With the court's permission, I'd like to present his findings. Judge Reeves nodded. Gordon approached and handed over the report. She read it silently while the courtroom waited. I couldn't see Brian's face from where I sat, but his lawyer kept glancing at him, her expression tightening. The expert states there are significant discrepancies between the signature on the restraining order and verified samples of Ms. Hoffman's signature, Judge Reeves said. The letter formations, the pressure points, the overall style, none of it matches. Brian's lawyer recovered quickly. Your Honor, handwriting can vary depending on circumstances. Stress, the type of pen used, the surface. I'm aware of that, counsel. But these discrepancies are substantial. Ms. Hoffman, do you have any explanation for how your name ended up on this document if you didn't sign it? I believe my ex-husband forged it, Your Honor. The room went silent. Brian leaned forward and whispered something to his lawyer. She shook her head slightly, then stood. Your Honor, this is exactly the kind of wild accusation Mr. Hoffman has been dealing with. Ms. Hoffman is attempting to deflect from her own behavior by, I'm not deflecting, I said, louder than I meant to. He forged the signature so he could get a restraining order and use it as an excuse to move our daughter out of state without my knowledge. That's absurd, Brian's lawyer snapped. There are no relocation plans. Gordon stood again. Actually, Your Honor, there are. We have evidence that Mr. Hoffman signed a lease for an apartment in Westfield, approximately 40 miles from here, with a move-in date scheduled for next week. He failed to disclose this to Ms. Hoffman or to the court. He handed over the lease agreement and the photos Mrs. Delgado had taken. Judge Reeves studied them carefully, then looked at Brian. Mr. Hoffman, is this accurate? Have you signed a lease outside this jurisdiction? Brian stood. His voice was steady, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. Your Honor, I was exploring options for better housing. Nothing has been finalized. These documents suggest otherwise. There's a signed lease agreement here with your name on it, along with photographic evidence of you receiving keys from a leasing agent. I was helping a friend look at apartments. Those photos are out of context. Gordon held up another document. We contacted the leasing office, Your Honor. They confirmed that Brian Hoffman signed a one-year lease 3 days ago and paid first and last month's rent. The unit is a 2-bedroom, and when asked, the agent mentioned Mr. Hoffman specified he'd need the second bedroom for his daughter. Brian's lawyer fumbled with her papers. Your Honor, even if my client did sign a lease, there's nothing illegal about seeking new housing. It proves he was planning to relocate the child without notifying the other parent, Gordon interrupted. Combined with the forged restraining order, it establishes a clear pattern. Mr. Hoffman fabricated legal documents to cut off Ms. Hoffman's access to their daughter, then planned to move Sophie to a location where Ms. Hoffman wouldn't be able to find them. That's completely false. Brian stood abruptly. I filed that restraining order because she's been unstable. Everyone who knows her has noticed. Sit down, Mr. Hoffman, Judge Reeves said sharply. He sat. She turned to Gordon. Do you have additional evidence supporting this claim of fabrication? We do, Your Honor. We'd like to call Mrs. Irene Delgado to the stand. She was Mr. Hoffman's former neighbor and has witnessed behavior that corroborates our theory. Mrs. Delgado was called in from the hallway. She walked to the witness stand slowly, using a cane, and was sworn in. Gordon approached her gently. Mrs. Delgado, can you describe your relationship with the Hoffmans? I lived next door to them for about 3 years. Watched their daughter grow up, saw them go through their divorce. I moved after my husband passed, but I still live in the area. Have you had any contact with Mr. Hoffman recently? Not directly, but I've seen him. Last week, I noticed him loading boxes into his car late at night. Then I saw him at the leasing office on Westfield Avenue. I got suspicious, so I took photos. Why did that make you suspicious? Because he was being secretive about it. Packing at odd hours, not telling anyone. It reminded me of how he used to operate when he and Claire were married. Always working angles, always keeping things close to the chest. Brian's lawyer objected. Your Honor, this is speculation and character assassination. I'll allow it, Judge Reeves said. Continue, Mrs. Delgado. When Claire got served with that restraining order, I knew something was wrong. She's a good mother. I saw her with Sophie all the time. Patient, loving, involved. Brian, on the other hand, always seemed more interested in looking like a good father than actually being one. Objection? Overruled. Mrs. Delgado is providing her observations as a witness. Gordon nodded. Thank you, Mrs. Delgado. No further questions. Brian's lawyer stood for cross-examination. Mrs. Delgado, you admit you haven't lived next door to the Hoffmans in over a year, correct? That's right. So you don't have direct knowledge of their day-to-day interactions or Ms. Hoffman's recent behavior? No, but I know what I saw last week. Photos of a man signing a lease. That doesn't prove fraud or conspiracy. It just proves he was looking at apartments. Mrs. Delgado leaned forward slightly. Young lady, I've lived long enough to recognize when someone's up to no good. That man was planning to disappear with that child, and everyone in this room knows it. Judge Reeves held up a hand. That's enough. Mrs. Delgado, you may step down. She returned to her seat. Judge Reeves looked at both lawyers, then at Brian, then at me. Here's what I'm seeing. We have a restraining order with a questionable signature. We have evidence that Mr. Hoffman signed a lease without disclosing relocation plans. We have testimony suggesting Mr. Hoffman was acting secretively. And we have no concrete evidence that Ms. Hoffman has done anything to warrant this protective order. Brian's lawyer tried one more time. Your Honor, the Child Services report was based on a complaint that appears to have been unsubstantiated. The caseworker's report, which I have here, indicates that Ms. Hoffman's home was clean, appropriate, and showed no signs of instability. The caseworker noted concerns only because of prior complaints, but found no direct evidence to support them. She set down her papers and removed her glasses. Mr. Hoffman, did you forge your ex-wife's signature on that restraining order? Brian's face went red. No, Your Honor, I would never, because if you did, that's a criminal offense. Fraud, forgery, and perjury. You'd be looking at serious consequences. I didn't forge anything. Then explain to me why a handwriting expert found significant discrepancies. Explain why you signed a lease without notifying Ms. Hoffman or this court. Explain why you've been systematically isolating her from your daughter. He opened his mouth, closed it. His lawyer put a hand on his arm, but he shook it off. She's been trying to turn Sophie against me. She's been making me look bad to everyone we know. I had to protect my daughter. By lying to a court? I didn't lie. You filed a restraining order with a forged signature and planned to move your daughter out of state without permission. That's not protection, Mr. Hoffman. That's kidnapping. The word hung in the air. Brian's lawyer stood quickly. Your Honor, my client has not been charged with any crime. This is a civil custody matter. For now, Judge Reeves said coldly. She shuffled her papers and looked at me. Ms. Hoffman, I'm dismissing the restraining order immediately. You are no longer barred from contact with your daughter. Relief hit me so hard I had to sit down. Furthermore, I'm granting you full physical custody pending a more thorough review of this case. Mr. Hoffman will have supervised visitation only, and any relocation plans are denied until this court determines appropriate custody arrangements. Your Honor, that's extreme. Brian's lawyer started. Your client forged legal documents and attempted to flee with a minor child. I'd say my ruling is more than fair. If Ms. Hoffman chooses to pursue criminal charges, that's her right. But for now, Sophie goes home with her mother. Brian stood again, panic finally breaking through his calm facade. You can't do this. Sophie needs me. She's happy with me. She needs a parent who doesn't lie to courts and manipulate legal systems for personal gain. Sit down, Mr. Hoffman. He didn't sit. He turned to me, his voice rising. This is what you wanted, isn't it? To take her away from me? To ruin my life? Mr. Hoffman, sit down now or I'll hold you in contempt. Gordon touched my arm, a silent reminder not to engage. Brian finally sat, his lawyer whispering urgently to him. Judge Reeves signed several documents and handed them to the bailiff. Full custody to Ms. Hoffman effective immediately. Supervised visitation for Mr. Hoffman, scheduled to be determined by the court. And I'm referring this case to the district attorney's office for review of potential criminal charges. We're adjourned. She stood and left. The room erupted in quiet chaos. Brian arguing with his lawyer, Mrs. Delgado patting my shoulder, Gordon gathering papers with a satisfied expression. I just sat there, staring at the table where Brian had been so confident an hour ago. Sophie was waiting at Child Services with a caseworker when I arrived. She looked smaller than I remembered, wearing a purple sweater I'd bought her 3 months ago. When she saw me, she ran. Mom! I caught her and held on, feeling her arms wrap around my neck. She smelled like strawberry shampoo and playground dust. Real. Solid. Mine. I missed you so much. I missed you too. Dad said you were sick. I'm not sick, baby. I'm fine. I'm sorry I couldn't see you. She pulled back and looked at me seriously. Dad said you didn't want to see me. That's not true. I wanted to see you every single day. I tried so hard. She nodded slowly, processing. Can I come home now? Yes, right now. We're going home. We walked to my car hand in hand. She chattered about school, about a book she'd been reading, about her friend who'd lost a tooth. Normal things. Kid things. Things I'd been terrified I'd never hear again. When we got home, she went straight to her room and started rearranging her stuffed animals like she'd never left. I stood in the doorway and watched her, this little person who'd been weaponized against me without understanding what was happening. My phone buzzed. A text from Gordon saying Brian's lawyer had called to discuss visitation schedules. Another text from Vanessa asking if Sophie was okay. A voicemail from Mrs. Delgado checking in. I ignored all of it. For now, Sophie was reorganizing her bookshelf, asking what we should have for dinner, telling me about a math test she'd aced. The court documents were filed. The truth was on record. Brian's lies had collapsed under the weight of evidence he never thought anyone would find. And I was standing in my daughter's doorway, listening to her voice, finally able to breathe.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and drop your favorite part in the comments. See you in the next one.